Hello everybody, I'm John O'Loughlin and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff_2020, my backup channel for McDuff, Kennedy's man to smash the CIA, where I am still locked up in YouTube jail for another couple days. So we're reading here in 15-minute segments, so I will keep the introduction short and proceed with reading our book Operation Gladio by Paul L. Williams. We're in chapter 15. Called The Pope Must Die, and we're just finishing it up on page 202. All right, so the unfortunate Mr. O's was gunned down and killed in front of his house for revealing the existence of a Gladio operation in Turkey. And forgive me for my Turkish language. I'm just going to roll through it because I don't have any background in it, and I'm just going to do the best I can without having to study pronunciation. Within days of issuing this warning, O's was gunned down and killed in front of his house. The CIA's financial support for the Wolves was also necessitated by the need to protect the Balkan route and the flow of heroin into the Anatolian plains from Afghanistan and Iran, said to be worth $3 million an hour. There, that makes sense, doesn't it? That's why they do it. $3 million an hour. I don't even know any lawyers that make that much. They also safeguarded the smuggling of weapons into the country. The scale of this smuggling may be discerned from the fact that the following illegal arms were confiscated in Turkey between 1980 and 1984. And here they are: 638,000 revolvers, 4,000 submachine guns, 48,000 rifles, 7,000 machine guns, 26 rocket launchers, and 1 mortar. The Wolves were so integral to the drugs for arms enterprise that it became almost impossible to make a clear-cut distinction between this Gladio unit, the Turkish Mafia, and Turkey's National Intelligence Operation, MIT, a so-called unofficial arm of the CIA. All three organizations were interlocked in Ergenekon. It's Ergenekon. Ergenekon, a clandestine ultranationalist movement that operated as a shadow state. Oh, shadow state. Where have I heard that phrase before? Deep state, shadow government. The bastard son. Ergenekon was the bastard son of Gladio, the illegitimate offspring of U.S. intelligence and the Babas. That Babas refers earlier in the book to Turkish mafiosi that would come to direct many of the critical events in Turkey and Central Asia in the 21st century. In many ways, it represented the culmination of the dreams of Alan Dulles, William Donovan, Paul Helliwell, and James Jesus Angleton. Ergenekon enabled street thugs, assassins, and drug lords to act with impunity. Even if incarcerated, such criminals had little to fear. Ergenekon could arrange their escape. It could create false identities. It could arrange the transfer of large sums of cash. After its formation in 1978, Ergenekon, by controlling the heroin trade from the Golden Triangle, became worth more than 20% of Turkey's earned income. Throughout the 1970s, Henry P. Shart, that's S-C-H-A-R-D-T, Dewey Claridge, and other CIA operatives in Turkey allegedly had nurtured several of Abuzer Ugurlu's wolf cubs, including Abdullah Kath and Mehmet Ali Agca. Kath, who, or maybe Chath, I don't know, it has a cedillo under it, Kath, who became the vice chairman of the Wolves, performed scores of high-profile assassinations, including the murder of 7 left-wing activists in 1978. Working with the agency, he became an agent provocateur in the 1980 coup. Agca began his criminal career as a drug smuggler on the Balkan route. He rose to become one of Ugurlu's trusted couriers, making regular trips to deliver messages and payments to Henri Arsène at Stibam in Milan. Eventually, he became one of the Babas bodyguards and hitmen working with Kath and Oral Çelik. Killing Ipekçi. On February 1, 1979, Agca took part in the murder of Abdi İpekçi, the editor-in-chief of Milliyet, one of Turkey's leading newspapers. When taken into custody, Agca quickly confessed, saying, "Yes, I shot and killed İpekçi. I was alone, and I fired 4 or 5 times." But there was a problem with his testimony. A total of 13 spent cartridges were found at the scene of the crime. İpekçi was one of Turkey's most distinguished journalists, and his assassination shocked the nation. Agca received a life sentence and was incarcerated in an Istanbul prison. After serving 6 months, he, quote, escaped, wearing an army uniform. There was, in fact, no flight. He simply strolled from the jail. In August 1979, with Abdullah Kath as his escort. The Babas needed him to get back to work. 3 days after his escape, Agca wrote a letter to Milliyet which made it clear that he was the perfect choice for a hit on the Holy Father. He wrote, quote, "Fearing that Turkey is attempting to realize a new political, military, and economic power with its Islamic brother countries in the Middle East during this highly sensitive time, the Western imperialists are sending John Paul, who behind his religious mask is a commander of the cross, with all speed to Turkey. If this senseless and poorly timed visit is not canceled, then I will not hesitate to shoot the Pope. This is the only reason I escaped from prison. Revenge will certainly be taken for an attack on Mecca by the United States and Israel." Agca was not only an experienced assassin who already had spewed his hatred of John Paul II, but also a radical Islamist and pan-Turkish visionary who longed for the return of the Ottoman Empire. Even better, he suffered paranoid delusions, at times professing that he was Jesus Christ. The Gladio Directive. Early in April 1981, Abuzer Ugurlu received word from Gladio: kill the Pope and blame the communists. It was to be the ultimate false flag attack. The message came with a payment of $1.7 million. The arrangements had been made by members of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. That is the Knights of Malta, right? P2, and the Safari Club, a covert organization that had been established by Henry Kissinger. The gunmen would be Kath and Agca. Well, that's the end of Chapter 15, and just a quick comment. This Safari Club is something that I've been noticing for a couple of years now on the internet, where you look into things like bibliotecapales.com, other places. If you just look up Safari Club, you'll find that it's associated with some of the really, really deep, dark operatives. And it's new to me. reading this book to learn that that was organized by none other than Henry Kissinger. Chapter 16, The Shooting in St. Peter's Square. Needless to say, writing about such matters as the Ipkeki murder in the underworld and the conspiracy to assassinate the Pope has inevitably made me a target for wide-ranging attacks. These serious threats from certain enemies and even enemies of enemies within the same circles, all in all gave me the impression that at the very least I was getting near the truth. Investigating the assassination conspiracy, I felt obliged to study the Ipkeki murder and the relationship between the banker Calvi and the Vatican. This, in turn, led me to the scandal involving the P2 Masons Lodge and the connection between Calvi and the Italian mafia. If I hadn't investigated the connection between Agca and the nationalists, the smugglers of the underworld and their international associates, the Vatican and the banker Calvi and the P2 Masons Lodge, and finally the P2 Lodge and the Italian Mafia, I would never have been able to get to the roots of the whole matter. That is a quote from Ugur Mumku, Papa Mafia Agca, 1984. Known as, quote, the blonde ghost. And now we're into the text. That was a quote from Agca. Known as the blonde ghost because of his aversion to cameras, Theodore Shackley, and who else but Theodore Shackley shows up now, right? You know Ted Shackley from many of my books, had been one of the CIA's most infamous agents. He had helped to set up the heroin trade in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War and had overseen Operation Phoenix, which involved the killing of 40,000 non-combatant Vietnamese who were suspected of collaborating with the Viet Cong. The blonde ghost also served as principal figure in Nugan Hand Bank, overseeing the deposit of billions in black funds into the Australian laundry. From Australia, he went to South America, where he took an active part in Operation Condor by organizing death squads. In Chile, he teamed up with Stefano delle Chiaie for the murder of Salvador Allende. In 1976, Shackley became the CIA's Deputy Director for Operations, a position which placed him in charge of covert operations throughout the world. He used this position to set up corporations and subsidiaries throughout the world to conceal the agency's involvement in the drug trade and its ties to Edwin Wilson and other notorious arms suppliers, who were providing highly sophisticated weaponry to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Many of these firms were set up in Switzerland and came to include Lake Resources, Inc., the Stanford Technology Trading Group, Inc., and Compagnie de Services Fiduciaires. Sorry about the French. Compagnie de Services Fiduciaires. Others, such as CSF Investments Limited and the Udall Research Corporation. Udall, interesting name. That's Senator Morris Udall, Stuart Udall, were located in Central America. A few were established in the United States, including the Orca Supply Company in Florida and Consultants International in Washington, D.C. All were funded by heroin proceeds, and a few, including the U.S. firms, were interlinked with the Vatican. After leaving the CIA in September 1979, Shackley formed Research Associates International, which specialized in providing intelligence to business. Such intelligence consisted of classified CIA files that the blonde ghost had removed from the agency. In 1980, Shackley's talents were sought by the Reagan-Bush Election Committee, and he became a key operative in planning the October surprise by which hostages remained in Iran until after the election.